Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're taking this massive 20-step React ecosystem checklist and translating it into a really clear, structured house-building blueprint. We're going to take you from novice to absolute master. You know, if you've ever looked at the sheer volume of technologies, libraries, and concepts surrounding React today, it can feel, well, less like a learning path and a lot more like an avalanche. But today, we're changing that.
20. It's a big number, right? But that single number represents the core milestone standing between you and a truly scalable, professional React architecture. From your basic prerequisites all the way up to those expert-level concepts like micro front-ends and React server components, there are exactly 20 major categories you need to conquer.
So how do you navigate such an overwhelming landscape without getting completely lost in the weeds? It's a genuine problem we see all the time. Too many developers try to, say, learn Redux before they even understand basic component architecture. Or they try to deploy a Next.js app before they really get the virtual DOM. Okay, let's fix this. Let's map out our exact construction plan. We're going to avoid the trap of isolated memorization and instead build a mental model that actually makes sense.
Here's our ultimate roadmap. 1. Laying the React foundation. 2. Structuring and styling apps. 3. Mastering state and data. 4. Pro-level React skills. And 5. Building real-world projects.
Let's dive into Phase 1, laying the React foundation. Before you pour the concrete, you absolutely need your raw materials. That means HTML5, CSS3, specifically Flexbox and Grid, and modern JavaScript, so ES6 and beyond. Once that sets, Step 2 introduces your React fundamentals. This is where you learn about single-page applications, JSX, and how to actually build basic components. Finally, Step 3 is where modern React truly lives. React hooks, mastering useState for local memory and useEffect for lifecycle events. Yeah, that is absolutely non-negotiable for a solid foundation.
Now, the absolute most crucial point in all these fundamentals is understanding the virtual DOM. Think of the virtual DOM as the highly efficient project manager of your construction site. Instead of, tearing down the whole wall every single time you want to change a picture frame, the virtual DOM calculates the exact minimal changes needed and updates only that specific spot. It's literally the underlying engine that makes your React house lightning fast.
Moving right along to Phase 2, structuring and styling apps. With our foundation firmly set, let's start framing the walls. Your component architecture relies heavily on some core principles to keep your project structurally sound. You're going to need a logical folder structure and reusable components so you aren't rebuilding the exact same door 50 times. You'll also learn to share data cleanly and use the composition pattern, which honestly is kind of like designing modular furniture that fits perfectly in literally any room. All of this ensures a strict separation of concerns, keeping your house super organized and easy to navigate. When it's time to paint and decorate the interior, modern React gives you several totally distinct approaches. You could go the traditional route with standard CSS or Sass. You could adopt a utility-first approach, where Tailwind CSS has obviously become incredibly popular for rapidly styling components. Or you could use CSS and JS tools like styled components in Emotion. These literally bind your styles directly to your JavaScript components. It's really up to your personal taste.
All right, on to Phase 3. Mastering state and data. Now it's time to install the electrical wiring. As your house grows from a tiny little cabin into a massive mansion, you'll inevitably encounter prop drilling. This is basically like trying to run an extension cord through 5 different rooms just to plug in a single lamp. It's messy and it's super inefficient. That is exactly why global state management tools were invented. Instead of passing props down endlessly, you use tools like the Native Context API or external libraries like Redux Toolkit, Zustand, or Jatai. They create a central breaker box that any room in the house can access directly. But wait, what about the plumbing? For pulling fresh data into your house from the outside world, modern React relies heavily on advanced fetching and caching tools. TanStack Query, which you probably know as React Query, and SWR are absolute game changers here. They handle complex tasks like caching data so you don't overfetch, prefetching data before the user even clicks, and managing optimistic updates so your app feels completely instantaneous. Of course, you can't just have open pipes everywhere. You need to secure those pipelines and manage what goes in and out. This means progressing from basic CRUD operations using Fetcher Axios to handling user input safely. For forms, tools like React Hook Form, paired with Zod for validation, are definitely the modern standard. And finally, you have to lock the doors. You need robust authentication APIs, whether that's implementing JWT tokens or OAuth. They're essentially digital ID cards to ensure only the right people get into specific rooms of your app.
Phase 4. Pro-level React skills.
This is where the hobbyists really separate themselves from the professionals by focusing on structural integrity. Pro developers don't just write code that works today, they ensure it won't break tomorrow by adding strict building codes. What does that mean? It means integrating TypeScript for static typing, ensuring your components in state are perfectly defined. It means writing automated tests using Jest and the React testing library to catch bugs before they even happen. And it means using modern lightning-fast build tools like Vite, along with Webpack and Babel, to package the whole shebang together cleanly.
Furthermore, to ensure your house runs efficiently without racking up a massive electricity bill, you have to master performance optimization. If your app is slowing down, you need to understand memoization, using hooks like useMemo and useCallback to prevent unnecessary re-rendering. You need to understand virtualization for massive lists, and you absolutely must implement lazy loading and suspense. Basically, that means only loading the parts of the house the user is actually standing in.
And finally, Phase 5, building real-world projects.
So, your house is built. Now, let's take a look at the neighborhood. The industry is heavily shifting towards powerful meta frameworks like Next.js and Remix. These allow you to leverage expert concepts like server-side rendering, which essentially pre-builds your house before the user even arrives, and cutting-edge React server components. Oh, and if you want to take your house on the road, React Native lets you build fully functional mobile apps using the exact same React knowledge.
Of course, none of this matters if you can't put your house on the market, right? Once your application is fully optimized through the build process, you'll need to push it to production. Understanding deployment platforms is key here. Whether you choose seamless platforms like Vercel, Netlify, or Cloudflare Pages, or maybe you go deeper into cloud infrastructure with AWS and Docker basics, getting your app live, securely, and scalably is a fundamental pro-level skill.
And here is the ultimate payoff. If you systematically follow this 20-step roadmap, from those foundational HTML prerequisites all the way through hooks, global state, TanStack query, TypeScript, and Next.js, these are the massive real-world projects you'll be fully equipped to build. We're talking a high-performance e-commerce store, complex admin dashboards, real-time chat applications, even a complete full-stack software as a service app. You aren't just learning syntax anymore, you're engineering real solutions.
But breaking this intimidating list into a structured blueprint, hopefully the fog is starting to lift. You now have a really clear path that prevents burnout. The tools are right in front of you, but the real question is, will you just keep reading about architecture, or are you finally ready to break ground and build something that actually scales? Which part of the React house are you going to start building today?